Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming again to Divorcing and Tax Summit. And it's Thursday on our fourth day, and we're really talking about the financial consequences of divorce. And I'm so grateful and thankful for Bonnie Kirchner to be with me today. And hi, Bonnie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be part of such a great event.
I'm just going to tell everybody about what we're talking about and then tell everybody a little bit about you. So Bonnie Kirchner, and our title today is Who Can You Trust with Your Money? And Bonnie is a certified financial planner, practitioner with a master's degree in taxation from Bentley University, and the author of Who Can You Trust with Your Money? 25 years ago, Bonnie became passionate about educating individuals on financial topics and quickly became a frequent speaker on retirement, estate, long-term care, investment, and education planning concepts. She has served as a financial reporter for the Boston CBS affiliate and anchored the Morning Drive business magazine Early Exchange. She can currently be heard on WRKO's Money Report, is a CFP board ethics sponsor and instructor, and a member of Bentley University's graduate school faculty. So welcome. That's so impressive, all that stuff that you've done in such a little time.
I've been around a long time and been through a lot, so I guess it all gets added to the resume, the good and the bad.
Well, you know what? I was so impressed with your talk. You know, I met you at the women's meeting here, and I was so moved by your story because it just resonated with so many other women, and you know, your inspiration, and then of course your book. You know, who can you trust with your money, Bonnie? I think that's the $1 million question today, isn't
it? Well, don't bury it in the backyard. But yes, so you and I met at an Enterprising Women event. And even though I do a lot of financial education on various topics, on that day I was actually talking about a particular topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that's surviving crisis, because we all have them, big and small. And well, the one that I went through, it wasn't exactly textbook. It was quite unusual, and I really didn't have any playbook to go by. And it took me years and years. People would ask me, gee, you know, how did you get through that? How did you get through that? And I just sort of be like, I don't know. I just put one foot in front of the other. And then you know, eventually I started to think about it, and there were a lot of mistakes that I made along the way. And I'm a big believer if you can learn from other people's mistakes. And I realized that there were certain things that really helped me cope when I was going through crisis. And certainly anybody who's going through a divorce, whether they want it or not, that is a crisis. And so just knowing some of the things in that setting where we were, I wanted to pass those things along with the financial lessons, of course.
Well, I think, and you did it so well. So that's why I'm so grateful that you're here to talk about that. And maybe you can just share a little bit of your story. And, you know, this week so far, we've really been talking about how this crisis, the divorce crisis in your life, touches every part of your life, you know, mind, body, soul, spirit, financial. And, you know, and afterwards, how do you move through that to be intact? You know, I'm sure you've heard that word, you know, and the reason why I wanted to call the summit that, and I haven't talked about this at all this week, was so many times I was told, well, if you were intact, you know, that was the language that they used within the court and also within, you know, legal language. If you were intact, or if I was financially intact, and all the while I was saying, well, I am intact, you know, I'm whole, I'm just going through this crisis. So that's why, you know, I would love if you would share a little bit about what happened to you and where you were in your life when that happened, because that was just a tsunami that hit you.
Yeah, I was at the top of my career. I was extremely excited about everything I was doing. I was the financial reporter for Channel 4 in Boston, the CBS affiliate. I was doing a 3-hour drive time business magazine on the radio. I was working with some really fabulous clients who remain with me to this day. And so everything was fantastic except my marriage. And but at that point, I had made steps. I had told my then husband that I was done. I was done with all the craziness and the drama and everything that I was going through in my marriage, that it was impacting me personally, professionally, all of that. And so at least I knew I was headed in the right direction. And then Veterans Day rolled around, and would it be okay if I read an excerpt from my book?
I would love that. I would love that. Do you know, I had a few copies of those, and they walked away within my coaching.
They walked away.
They grow little feet and walk away, which I love. So I don't have one to show, but go, please read one. Read a part.
So I wrote Who Can You Trust Your Money based upon what I went through. And what's very important to know is that I also worked for my husband's companies. That's where I had my financial planning clientele. So you would never imagine, when I was sitting in my office on Veterans Day morning in 2004, and our receptionist comes and knocks on the door. I was getting ready for a bunch of client meetings, and after I'd done TV and radio, and she comes to the door and she says, here's a package for you, and I'm supposed to tell you you're to wait 3 minutes before you open it. And I sort of looked at her and I'm like, what? And she shrugged her shoulders and she walked off, and I'm like, So I let it be, and I took care of things, but my curiosity got the best of me. And so I opened up that package. Inside of it was a little recording device, and on it, in my husband's handwriting, was a little yellow sticky that said, press here to play. And I thought, okay, this is a last-ditch effort to keep it together. It's some romantic message. And I'm just like, all right, whatever, I'll play the message. Well, nothing could prepare me for this. Hello, Bonnie, it's me. Straight to the chase here. Tragic, tragic news. My immediate thought, of course, was to my stepchildren. I thought something had happened to one of them. He goes on to say, I'm guilty of some very hideous crimes. I've been stealing clients' monies for roughly 20 years, and we're talking about tens and tens of millions of dollars. I mean, we're talking about very, very big monies, and today a wire for the Greek church is supposed to hit for 1.5 million, which does not exist because I've stolen it. So everything is going to hit the fan today. Obviously, the monthly statements that I was generating are false. The monies didn't exist in those statements. It's a great big Ponzi scheme. I would end up having clients make checks payable to my asset management firm, and I wouldn't put them on deposit with the custodian. I don't understand how I could have gotten myself into this thing. It was just one little step at a time that got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the stakes got higher and higher and higher, and it just got totally out of control. That is an actual excerpt from his confessional tape.
I don't know how you didn't get physically ill. I'm sure you went into shock. I don't know. So what did you do?
My first reaction was, he is absolutely nuts. He's insane. He's completely lost his mind, because regardless of the fact that I was having my own difficulties with him, which were not insignificant, I never could have possibly believed that he would be the type of individual that would steal money from the clients that he seemed to love so much, including his own mother. So it was very hard for me to believe. But over the next couple of weeks, and I remember that day, I just was completely perplexed. I immediately called the president of our company, who also happened to be the best man at our wedding. And I said, Jim, what kind of joke is this? What kind of sick joke is this? And he had not heard the tape that had been delivered to him yet.
Oh, no.
So,
oh, God.
So I immediately gathered my things. I went to his office, which was in a different building, and I waited for him to listen to his tape. And he was just as shocked as I was. It was just really really amazing, because if you knew my ex-husband, you'd never believe that he would betray people in this manner. And it was such a betrayal. It was not just the stealing of money. It was the complete betrayal, because he was so close to his clients. So many of them thought of him as a brother or a son or a best friend. In so many cases, he actually was.
That is just, it's unfathomable. I can't even, I don't have the words even to address that. And how do you move through that? How do you move through that? And then I remember part of it is you lose everything. You lose everything.
Absolutely. I mean, this touched absolutely every aspect of my life, because there goes my family and my marriage. And granted, I was trying to get out of the marriage, so he certainly helped expedite that.
Yes.
But I immediately lost my TV job, my radio job. So I lost income sources that were not insignificant. I was basically told, hey, guess what? You can't be delivering the news when you're part of the news. So it was just like the blows kept coming. And then all of our assets were frozen at that time. And I was locked out of my house because our house was considered a crime scene. And because as I mentioned, I work for my husband's company, all of my clients' assets were frozen. Even though they were all accounted for, they were fine, they were frozen, which caused anguish for my clients. That stopped another income source for me. So in one fell swoop with what he did, I was homeless, incomeless, jobless. So I was definitely in crisis.
And there's nothing else that could have been taken from you. And there you are, you come back from it and use that as a passion to help other people, and you write the story. And that is just, I remember sitting in the back of the room going, okay, this has to take an upturn, because that's just like, this has to take an upturn. Please tell me that. But looking at you, you know it does, but it's such a betrayal on so many levels. And so why don't you move us through that? How did you come to the other side? And the fact that you're a financial planner, the fact that you are helping other people with money, and I'm sure you had to overcome the guilty by association, that how you cleared you, knowing that you were working together, you were in that same situation. And believe me, I understand how you don't know things, how that personality has the ability to keep things from you in a way that you would never consider. At the beginning of this conversation, you said, I would never consider that from him.
Well, and he was very good at creating distractions. With all of the difficulties in our marriage, I was not looking for him to be some sort of a fraudster. I mean, there were certainly other things I could have called him, but, that certainly was not one of them. He definitely, all of his advisors, and I think there were about 30 of us in the end, we had to have the CFP designation. We had to have been working on it. All of the compliance pieces were buttoned down, bolted down, because he wanted to create the image that everything was perfect. So he was a master of distraction. Right. Never in your right mind would I have thought. And I had a conversation with his direct assistant and his executive assistant and the president of the company and our chief financial officer. And we decided it would have taken the perfect storm of conversation between us in order to come up with the idea that he was possibly doing this. Nice. And I think about situations now where he actually moved people within the company because he didn't want them working directly for him because they were too smart, and he figured that they would figure it out. I mean, I have one gal, super smart, working on our certified financial planner designation, working on our chartered financial analyst designation, just, moving, was working directly for Brad. And eventually he just moved her to our asset management company. She came crying to me and she's like, why would he do this? Why would he do this? Did I do something wrong? I said, no, it's a promotion, but she didn't understand. I didn't understand the true story behind it. So he was very careful of what he did. So I don't feel that I ever felt guilty about it. If anything, I felt badly that perhaps the persona that I had on TV might have made clients more quickly for him, and maybe people didn't check him out so quickly because they could see his wife on TV every morning or listen to her on the radio. That makes me feel sad.
Well, that's part of that personality, about having the ability to present a persona or create the illusion. And you know, look at you, you're beautiful, you're on TV, you're an expert, you cross your T's and dot your I's, and you know, what a better image to have if you were doing something that wasn't appropriate and like illegal. So
well, on top of that, he was previously divorced. So he had been married. He had 3 children by that marriage. I came into this marriage with a cat, so and my own resources. So because he had already gone through such a difficult divorce, I didn't want to be that spouse that appeared to be after his money or after anything. So we kept our finances completely separate. I was financially independent when I went into the marriage, and I didn't want to be financially dependent on him. So, you know, if we would start to talk about finances and it would get a little bit squeamish, I pretty much ran the other way because I wasn't going to be that person that was after his money. And that was another thing that worked in his favor because yes, I do know finances, and I you know, probably could have recognized some things if there was a little bit more exposure, but you know, he was excellent at hiding what he was doing, and he had years of practice. He had been doing it for 20 years. So
can you imagine that, to live in that body, in that, like all the energy that it took to keep that up? And so what made you say, I'm going to write this story and I'm going to share this and I'm going to help other people heal from my experience? Is that what started you to write the book, or why did you want to do it?
I had a lot of offers. This story was People magazine worthy. It was all over papers, TV, everything. And I had so many people say to me, you know, why don't you tell your side of the story? Why don't you? And, you know, of course, initially legal stuff that's going on. So you can't really. But over time, I got a lot of offers from documentaries. And my favorite was Investigation Discoveries. Who the bleep did I marry?
Oh my gosh.
And I'm just like, the title is interesting. I'm guessing this is not going to be up my alley. And I watched an episode, and it was one that was not so different from my scenario. But I said, no, I don't really want to sensationalize this thing. But I actually did a lot of editing for some financial books, and I happened to be in New Jersey, and I visited with the editor for whom I had been doing work. And he asked me the question. He said, this is such a great story. He's like, why don't you tell it? And I said, you know, I really don't want to sensationalize this thing. And him, unless it's going to do somebody some good. And so we came up with the concept of who can you trust with your money, that, okay, I'm going to tell a little bit about the story, but the rest of it's going to be about how people can protect themselves, how they can arm themselves with knowledge, and so that they can feel more confident in the financial relationships that they have. So we discussed this and agreed about it. And about 6 weeks later, he calls me. He's like, so I think it's a great story. Can we put together a proposal? Because I really want to get going on it. And this was 2008. This is during the last financial crisis. So of course my clients are feeling very squeamish. I'm no longer a part of a big firm. I have my own individual firm. So I'm trying to handle this all myself. And I said, you know, I want to do it, but right now we're having a global financial crisis, and I have to be here for my clients. And 2 weeks didn't go by, and news broke about Bernard Madoff. And so my phone rang that very same day, and it was the publisher and editor that I worked for. And they said, if you're going to do it, you need to do it now.
Yeah.
So at the time, as it was, we came out of financial crisis the following March. The market turned around, and I had a summer date for the due date of my manuscript, and so it all worked out, and I managed to get it all done and keep my clients happy at the same time.
Isn't it amazing how much you can get done? When I wrote my second book, I had just given birth, and I was breastfeeding and typing with one hand because I'm like, I'm not going to miss this deadline. I still look at my daughter thinking, oh God, that probably wasn't the best thing to be doing, but you did it, and you're.
Sure was. She was participating.
Yeah. But you did it, and it's so helpful. And I think the takeaway for me was, sitting and listening and realizing, what position I was in. I went through a very high conflict divorce at the time. My ex-husband works in the financial field, and just listening to that, for me, the part for me that it was challenging and upsetting was, I was 22. I started my own company. I had my own home. I was, I was the president of the chamber, and I abdicated, my insight and attention onto the financial matters. And I think, that moment when you're a woman and you're like, what did I do? That was 2 decades. Like you said, you were with your husband, for that whole time. And I think, at a moment in my crisis, when my ex-husband, shut off all the credit and reported it stolen and took the funds and ran, I had one credit card in my name that I had since I was 20.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, we have to talk about this as women, and I have to teach my daughter that, it's your responsibility to be financially savvy, to have your groove financially on. And that's why this part of the summit is so important for women, because I don't want them to be feeling badly because I had that moment of what did I do? I had my own company. I was doing it all by myself since I was 22. And then, it was like, amnesia or something happened, and I was in this situation. But I love how you said you had your own money, you kept your own money and your own reign over that money, if you would,
Well, I did, but I also, because I always followed my own advice, and I did invest on a regular basis. I was investing in a brokerage account and that had both of our names on it. So I did set up a joint. I figured I was doing the good thing by diversifying, because he's putting all of his money into the companies. So I'm going to diversify, and I'm going to build our own separate portfolio. And, guess what? That was all my money. I can prove it was money that I earned, yet that was definitely available to the federally appointed receiver. So when you go through something like this, the government appoints a law firm to take over the matters, the legal matters, the financial matters. And they felt that they were freely, half of that account was available to them. So that was extremely frustrating to me, not to mention the division of physical assets and having all of your stuff put up for auction in an auction house, and having to try to reclaim some of the things that might have been of historical importance. So it just, it is a really just awful thing to go through, as is any divorce. And I think, you're absolutely right about wanting your daughter to be financially savvy. And I think more and more these days, young women are. The fact that I had some money set aside in my own name was a little bit accidental, just because it was just sort of, I was doing well and I'm a good saver. And so money was just coming into my bank account of it. And sometimes I would invest it. And, but thank goodness I had it, because the legal bills, all my income was shut off. The legal bills were absolutely astounding. So I needed that money, and I needed that money to live, because I would have been homeless if it hadn't been for, the people around me, and because I had some funds to work with.
So closing, because I want to make sure underneath us right now on the watch page is all your information.
Okay.
So I'm pointing down because all you have to do is click on the links underneath us. And I think you're offering a free a giveaway. So if you hit that link underneath. But what would be just maybe 2 takeaways for a woman listening? Regardless, maybe she's thinking about divorce, or she's in the middle of divorce, or she's landed on the other side, and financially it's, not what she thought she was going to be, or where she thought she was going to be. What would you say for 2 little strategies to feel empowered and move forward?
I think either taking the steps to understand your financial situation, doing some budgeting, making sure you understand what assets are yours to keep, and building from there, or making sure that you have a good advisor who can help you do it and help you understand the process. Communication is very important through these things, but also keeping the emotions out of it. And that was something that helped me. For some reason, I was able to just sort of get out of my head and focus day to day on business, and not let the emotions overwhelm me, so that I could try to keep a good mental state when I was negotiating with the feds, and when I was dealing with the SEC. And
I can't imagine that.
And I think that's the hard thing, is that women have a tendency, more so than men, to get emotional about the whole situation, and that can end up costing you dearly. And I think too is keeping your eye on the prize. What is your goal for going through this divorce? Are there kids involved? Because what I've seen time and time again is that it's the lawyers who come out with the most money. So if you don't have good legal representation and they don't have your best interest at heart, it could be that there's a lot of hours being wasted on things that are just going to take money away from your kids, and you just don't want that. So if mediation is an option, so be it. But I realize that there are so many severe situations that that's not possible.
Well, you're echoing Attorney Heather Quick talked about how men are so able to snap and just compartmentalize this process. And, we talked about how women, come from a center of being fair. Well, let's be fair. And men, really, it's a business exchange. It's just a business, transaction. And so what I found too, speaking with women in my support groups or my coaching clients, they get to a point emotionally that they just want it to end. And they're going to leave money on the table and walk away because they just want the emotional pain or the trauma that's happening or whatever, blowback that is happening with their children. They just want it to end. And so I think what you said is so appropriate and important. I just want to kind of rephrase it, and you can jump in too, is that you need your team. You need a financial planner, a financial advisor, a financial lawyer, because, a tax lawyer, and you need your lawyer, because there was times, even for me personally, and I wonder if you had those times that you were just like, okay, forget it. I just can't tolerate this anymore. But you need that team around you. It's like, oh no, not yet. Don't play the short game. You're playing the long game, and stay with it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, the one thing about my situation is when you get a divorce and there are no assets left, it's actually quite easy. My actual divorce was very, very simple. I think my lawyer and I went and had Bloody Marys after, but that makes a difference. But I think you're absolutely right. I've seen it time and time again where women I've been working with just say, I just want it done. I want it behind me. I just want to move on with my life. So I'm willing to make the sacrifice just to make it go away. And you're absolutely right. I see it time and time again, and it's not a good situation. So having those team members to check in with you and help you do the right thing and stick to your guns on this makes a lot of sense.
Well, thank you so much. So hold back up that book. Who can you trust with your money? And people can get a hold of you through the link that's underneath us. And I so thank you for sharing your story. You know, first when I heard it a little bit ago, a few months ago, and of course now, you know, you just shine a light on this in a way that's so easily heard. And, you know, maybe people are hearing your story and you know, I'm sure they're inspired to move forward. And, you know, through the summit, we're helping to build that team. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I think if I can help one person, you know, it's all worth it writing the book.
So tell us the happy ending. Tell us the happy ending. So now you've moved through that. Is it the rear view mirror? Like when you're feeling like you're just talking about what's in the rear view mirror when you talk about the story all the time?
Well, I think it's really funny because when you go through crisis like this, there's a tendency to want to put everything back exactly the way that it was. And that's exactly how it was for me, because I'm just like, I'm going to go back to the town where I was living. I want to get back on TV. I want to get back doing radio. You know, I was trying so hard to get my old life back, minus my husband, but that I was missing opportunities. And once I sort of got out of that track of I'm going to put everything back the way it was, I realized that there were things that were missing in my life that were now in place. I think the whole process made me be more open with my family and with my friends. I was talking with them a lot more. I was laughing a lot more. I wasn't taking myself so seriously. And I was doing things that would help me take a break from what was going on. Sailing is something I always loved, but I had gotten away from it. I started sailing with this wonderful group of women. You know, so just so many different opportunities if you can just let go of that image of what your past was and trying to keep going back to it, because it's just not healthy.
No, I did similar. You know, for me, I was a dancer, and I started dancing with this amazing group of women, and it was a hoot. And it was as if that gave me an opportunity to look for the opportunities instead of being stuck in what I had thought things were going to be or how things were going to be. It opened up more possibilities. And I think sometimes when you're in that trauma, it's hard to feel like there is opportunities, but just what you said, you know, you opened yourself up, and that's a perfect way of saying that, you know. So within this, you could have closed yourself off and, you know, hid away, but you opened yourself out and tried, you know, different adventures. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a wonderful way to leave this, is that, you know, the heartache and the trauma, you know, you're going to move through it. And it doesn't matter if we're talking, you know, socially or relationship wise or financially, it's going to be okay. You're going to get to the other end. And you're the walking, you could be the poster child.
Well, I think so many of us can be. And I think that's one of the things in getting involved with a group of women doing something you love is just great, because you learn that so many other people have been through things that are very different from what you have been, but you learn from each other. And then you also realize that there are people who are going through worse things, and that, you know, you don't like to see that, but it does put things in perspective for yourself.
It does. So thank you so much, Bonnie. I so appreciate it. Bonnie Kirchner, and Who Can You Trust with Your Money? And click the links underneath us, and you can watch and listen over and over. And if you want to contact Bonnie, there's a link underneath also, which is right to her website. So thank you so much. Have a great evening. I so appreciate it.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Okay. Bye-bye, honey.